Make your point on the News Hour. Join Arnab every night on the News Hour with your question. Ask your question and join the debate.
Mr. Jaitley, thank you very much. It's great to meet you, and thank you for joining us on Frankly Speaking. We talk about a range of issues, Mr. Jaitley.
Please go ahead.
I want you to be as frank as possible on these issues. Mr. Jaitley, you just completed 2 years of the government. Your government was elected on the issue of corruption more than any other issue, on the fight against corruption. Don't mind my saying it, Mr. Jaitley, but the sense one gets, and the argument can be put, that the fight against corruption is still more a slogan, at least in terms of looking at the corrupt deeds of the previous governments, that you use it like a Damocles sword, but you're not really pushing the envelope. What really have you done? I can put 2-3 examples which prove that your words versus action don't match, but first I'd like to hear from you on whether you feel satisfied enough.
I think this is one area where we can positively and confidently claim that we brought about a transformation in this country. This is the first government in Indian history which has denuded itself of power. In the very first 6 months of the government, we said, we don't want the power to allocate resources. Now, resources is wealth, whether it's coal or it's mineral or it's spectrum. In regard to each one of them, either through policy or legislative change, we eliminated our own discretions. We went by the market mechanisms and we brought about a transformational change. In the last 2 years of this government, which are the first 2 years of the NDA government, I think nobody raises the issue of political corruption in Parliament. Because in government's own functioning, there is a sea change which has taken place. Now, what happens to the scams of the past? You had the coal scam, the prosecutions are in court. You have the 2G scam, the prosecutions are in court. Nobody has even whispered that we have tried in any way to interfere with them. And as far as other details of corruption which come in, now I'll give you examples. Each one of the HSBC cases, the foreign bank account cases, assessments have been completed, prosecutions have been launched. Each one of the Panama cases, in hundreds of them, notices have gone, and we are trying now to divide between those who lawfully had monies outside, or somebody who was an NRI, and those who unlawfully had it outside. Each one of the Liechtenstein cases, prosecutions have been launched. Not a single example has been given that we had a holy cow and we were trying to protect.
May I counter you, Mr. Jaitley? Let's talk about the high-profile ones, the ones which are spoken, discussed in the media, also reported by us. See, Mr. Jaitley, on May 6th, the Defence Minister said in Parliament, he said, and I quote, "What we did not do in Bofors, maybe we will do in Augusta Westland." So the allusion was towards political accountability. That's a nice, grandiose statement to make. But 3 years since a CBI probe was announced in this case, almost 2 years since you came to power, in the case of Augusta Westland, we are still nowhere close behind the rhetoric to knowing whether bribes were paid to members of the political establishment. So in that sense, are we going exactly the Bofors way?
No, we are not. I think we went about the Bofors way also correctly. When Mr. Vajpayee came to power in 98, for the first time a regular FIR was launched. It had not been launched before that. It was launched during Mr. VP Singh's period, then the charge sheet was filed during Mr. Vajpayee's period. The investigations were completed. You had a flawed verdict of the Delhi High Court, I've written about it. The UPA came back, decided not to appeal, and gave the case a burial. In this case, the moment we took over, the investigations were expedited. The procedure for not dealing with a particular party. I was the one in the Defense Ministry at that time. I passed the order within the first 2 or 3 weeks of the government taking over. The matter is with the investigative agencies which are now investigating the matter. A part charge sheet has been filed by them. Now comes the ultimate mystery. And the ultimate mystery is that you have a case where bribe givers have been identified and punished. Admittedly, there had to be bribes. That's why bribe givers have been punished. The identity of bribe takers is to be established and evidence gathered. Now, this evidence is probably lying hidden somewhere. And it's the onus is on investigative agencies. Now, whether the investigative agencies reach there or not, how fast they are able to reach there, is a challenge which the system has because of inherent complications. But as far as our intention to act in the case is concerned, so that the straight line route is taken, I think the intention is beyond.
So intention is to be met with action when there is a promise of this kind made by the Defence Minister in Parliament. As a follow-up, Mr. Jaitley, in your mind, in your own mind, prima facie, examination of facts, and I'm not saying mention individual A, B or C, but prima facie, does it appear to you that what happened could have happened without the collusion of members of the political establishment?
Well, I think bribes in transactions like defense are normally given to people who have an influential say in the matter of award of the contract. Bribes are not given to unconnected third parties. They are given to those who take the decisions, those who influence the decisions. Therefore, somebody somewhere who influenced the decisions could have received the money. That's a safe presumption. But I think you need evidence in order to prove the identity of that individual. And being a responsible government, I think the investigative agencies, without any political interference, have all the power to go and investigate that.
You see, Mr. Jaitley, when I said that symbolism of action against corruption, let me give you one more example, because frankly, I'm not yet convinced. We all remember the Damad Shri document that your party had released ahead of the 2014 elections. Robert Vadra had become an election issue. Now, the same problem I have in this case, 2 years on since you came to power, it's today to the day 397 days since the Haryana government appointed the Justice Dhingra Commission, and Haryana government is a BJP government. There is no formal case against Robert Vadra. In October 2014, you had yourself stated that prima facie, there is a case for investigation. Isn't there an obvious go slow?
Sir, I think
why do we get the sense there's a go slow on Robert Vadra?
The process of law is capable of taking time. A due process of law will necessarily involve detection of evidence, establishing that there is a prima facie case, getting either an investigative agency or a commission of inquiry to come out with all the facts and place them before the country. And if that makes out an offense, then to convert it into a charge sheet. That's the due process. Now, the due process takes time. Charging a person in the course of a television program or filing a charge sheet in the court, I think the level of evidence has to be entirely
No, I agree. But is there any sort of a trepidation that if you go all out against Robert Vadra, the political backlash may be inappropriate?
Absolutely none. As I have repeatedly said, this government has no holy cows. If there was an allegation against one of our ministers in Maharashtra, the party immediately took a decision that he must step aside till he is vindicated. After all, we set a good example in Maharashtra, and we've run a clean government, and there is nobody. And why should we at all be interested in covering up for people against whom there could be possible evidence?
No, is there a balancing going on here?
No, there is no question of a balancing. You see, there is no question of a balancing. For instance, there are cases. Now, let's take...
Can I take one more example? Yeah. Sorry to break your train of thought. See, Mr. Jaitley, the point I'm making, it's 2 years since you've been in power. The perception is that in terms of fixing accountability for the actions of the previous government, there has been a disconnect between what was promised by you, what has actually happened. Now, let's talk about the case of Ishrat Jahan. Now, this is a story we've covered. I remember in an interview to Times Now, you had described the second affidavit that was silent on Ishrat's terror credentials as fraudulent. This was your word. 107 days ago, on March 10th, the Home Minister Rajnath Singh spoke in the Lok Sabha about the missing about constituting a panel into these missing Ishrat files that have gone missing. Some of them which would have shed light into the circumstances of the case. Yet today we find not only have the panel's findings come out inconclusive, there is an allegation that there was a tutoring of a witness which came out yesterday. Is it turning out to be a damn...
I think no. What is the Ishrat Jahan case? The Ishrat Jahan case, first on the merits, is that the Intelligence Bureau had information that a module functioning from across the border is entering India, the state of Gujarat, wanting to assassinate a political leader. It was an operation of Indian intelligence agencies. In coordination with the Gujarat anti-terror police, the central IB is involved. There is an encounter, and you have those alleged terrorists being killed in the encounter. On the same day, the mouthpiece of the Lashkar-e-Toiba on their website puts up a message saying, 2 of our activists, and they name the lady in question,
right,
have been killed by the Indian security forces. So they own up to this Lashkar-e-Toiba operation. The affidavit filed by the Home Ministry in court clearly says that this was an operation of the elite, it was a security operation. Sometimes later, the government of India smells an opportunity. Can we completely disown the central government's role and fix it on the political leadership of Gujarat? They tried to tutor witnesses, they tried to have a deal with... How many times did a police officer visit the Ahmedabad jail to have a deal with those police officers who were in prison? Now there is recorded evidence of all that available. Thereafter, when the government changes, you suddenly find, even under the previous government, you found that there was no evidence against the political leaders.
True.
Now, if I can remind your viewers, that whole evidence was being concocted. If you remember the famous phrase which one of your competing channels was highlighting day in and day out, that I was told by a senior police officer that the man with a white beard and a man with a black beard wanted this operation to be carried out. We all knew how the fabrications were going on. Suddenly you find a changed affidavit in the court and the Home Ministry disowns it. The Home Secretary at that time has made a statement. Now, according to me, the issue is a security operation carried on by Indian intelligence agencies against a terrorist organization. The government of India not only covers it up, but tries to convert it into some kind of a murder of an innocent. The Home Ministry is trying to investigate. And I saw the news story in one of the newspapers. At the end of the day, what is the story? The additional secretary is telling a joint secretary, please come and have your statement recorded. The joint secretary says, but I have already given my statement in writing. He says, no, what you have said in writing, you have to come and reaffirm it orally. I'll ask you the same question, you have to repeat the same thing, which is a procedural formality. And this entire defense is now being called a vindication. Is it a vindication of the fact that a Lashkar-e-Toiba group was being passed off as some kind of martyrs killed by the Indian security forces? I think as far as this case is concerned, I remember having written at that particular time in 2012-13 when this was going on, that I hope one day there is a commission of inquiry to go into the activities of the CBI and to how this case is being fabricated.
So why don't you come with a conclusive action in this case? If it has to be executive action.
I think the Home Ministry is investigating the missing file. As I said, these are due processes which take time, and a due process which takes time certainly will come out with the truth as far as the matter is concerned.
No, but Mr. Jaitley, is it or is it not a matter of great national security risk that you know a person is a terrorist, you change an affidavit, and you create another situation where you believe that the government distances itself from her being a terrorist? Secondly, a file in which the Attorney General's opinion on the matter is corrected, changed, editorialized, whatever change has happened, I think the country needs to know what that change was. It has implications on national security.
I am sure since the Home Ministry investigation is on, it's in the final stages, they'll come out with a proper report.
Will it be a damn squib?
I don't think it will be a damn squib, because the manner in which the Ishrat Jahan case was tried to be subverted by the then Home Ministry, I think makes it out as an open and shut case.
Mr. Jaitley, I mentioned 3 cases before I move on. Augusta, Robert Vadra, Ishrat Jahan.
But which case have we compromised on?
It's slow.
The Indian due process of law could be slow. But each one of these cases will meet its fair and due process.
In this term of this government, or will it become an election issue for 2019?
No, I'm sure whatever time it takes, I hope it doesn't take very long.
But Mr. Jaitley, issue number 2, which I hope won't take very long.
Now, may I just,
go on.
Just tell you, when we take action in cases, we are told that you are being vindictive. Now, the case against the family of Captain Amrindra Singh, with regard to the HSBC accounts, the government of India got information in 2011, much before we came in, and suddenly the Congress party turns around and says, oh, you are being vindictive to him. But this is information which came in 3 years before we came in. The case against Mr. Veerbhadra Singh, the income tax raid took place in 2012, where the entire fraud was discovered.
So they say that you're taking on Amrinder Singh because you have a personal axe to grind.
Well, as I said, the information was given to us through the French sources in 2011, much before the 2014 election. The government of India addressed letters through 2012 and then slept over them. We expedited them. I didn't advise his family members to go to the HSBC and open an account. The raid on the alleged monies in regard to Mr. Veerbhadra Singh took place in 2012. Where is the question of vindictiveness? We have only taken these cases to its logical conclusion, and the investigative agencies are acting fairly.
Mr. Jaitley, when will you sack Pahlaj Nihalani?
Well,
there has to be a time frame to it. You realize the context.
No,
may I please? This man, Mr. Jaitley, has tested the patience of the nation. And he is seen to be a political appointee. He goes around and says things such as, if I may present before you, yes, I am a chamcha of Narendra Modi. I am proud to be a Modi chamcha. Should I be a chamcha of the Italian Prime Minister instead? Why is Pahlaj Nihalani so important? Why is he so indispensable that you're willing to risk? You're also the Information and Broadcasting Minister, repeated embarrassment for his actions.
Well, I think the issue of individual apart, because in the course of a television interview, it's not fair for me to make comments on individuals. I am really more concerned with the subject. And the subject being such where we have to ensure that arbitrary discretions are eliminated in the Film Certification Board. Now, aware of the problem which takes place, it's taken place in the past also, it's taken place now. The problem at times is overstated. For example, people allege that the CBFC is a very conservative organization. The Appeal Tribunal is a liberal organization. That's also constituted by the government. So at the end of the day, hardly anything gets stopped. With some marginal changes here or there, they get cleared. The issue is, how do we deal with this larger problem? Will individual discretions come in? I had therefore appointed an expert group, which comprised of very eminent people. And that group, headed by Mr. Shyam Benegal, has submitted a first report. I am awaiting their second report. We've more or less prepared our response. And I think if you wait for a few days more, you'll get to know our response as to how we intend dealing with this larger problem. The problem of individuals is relatively a minor problem. By changing individuals, I don't think we'll be able to solve the problem itself. That's a separate issue.
What do you think of the way the individual has been behaving?
You see, each individual has his own style. And therefore...
very forgiving, Mr.
No. I think each individual has his own style. Some people are conservative, some are more liberal in this. maybe my own approach would have been very different. And I have no hesitation in telling you that I have, on 2 occasions, advised the CBFC, that's the only 2 occasions I have spoken to them, to the chairman,
To Pahlaj Nihalani.
that they must strictly adhere to the guidelines and not get into a media battle. If somebody is aggrieved, then he has the option of going to the tribunal and having the order set aside. In fact, a large number of orders passed by the CBFC have been set aside by the tribunal. In fact, the CBI has a complaint.
Do you think it was insulting of the CBFC to put the name of the High Court judge on the censor certificate? That was something which was completely unwarranted?
See, I have a feeling...
Has it become an ego battle for Pahlaj Nihalani?
No, I think all you do in such cases is that the certificate is being granted as per directions of the Honorable High Court, dated so and so. I think that's a more appropriate way of putting it.
No, Mr. Jaitley, you speak of radical changes that are soon to be announced. I hope those radical changes come. But that Shambenical Committee's terms of reference do not include an assessment of Pahlaj Nihalani's own style of functioning. Now,
well,
that is for the government to do.
I am reasonably certain that once we are able to announce those new guidelines, the role of individuals will get diluted. How to deal with the individuals, I think you must trust the judgment of the government. The government will deal with them and advise restraint or take whatever appropriate action is required in the matter.
No, but if you implement the Benegal report, and I'm pushing this, but you continue to have Pahlaj Nihalani at the helm. See, there's a symbolism to this whole matter, Mr. Jaitley, and I'm sure that a person of your experience understands
I think
the credibility issue that you're facing because of Pahlaj Nihalani.
I'm quite aware of the challenge, and therefore I have suggested that you leave this issue to the government because we are seized of the matters. And at the moment, my priority is to resolve the institutional mechanism rather than resolve it just by changing individuals.
But let me ask you directly, do you agree with Pahlaj Nihalani's idea of filmmaking where intimate scenes have to have a certain duration? I mean, here's a man who says a kissing sequence must be edited by 15 seconds, 20 seconds, where people are expected to speak in the most chaste words.
I would not comment on it for the reason that I am not a censorship expert and I don't know what precedents have been followed over the last 20, 30 years. It is precisely for this reason that some very valuable suggestions have been made by the Shambenical Committee.
Right.
And if I may just indicate, one aspect of those suggestions has been that the certification guidelines must relate to the restrictions on free speech which are mentioned in the Constitution itself. You can't have too wide certification restrictions as far as filmmaking is concerned. And therefore, the context also keeps changing with the years. Something which was relevant in the 1970s is not relevant today. And therefore, attitudes also change.
So you're saying Pahlaj Nihalani won't have that kind of discretion if this were to come in?
I think the more important issue is to eliminate the discretions. The incidental issue is how do you deal with such people? I think on both issues, you wait for a few days and probably you'll get the answer to your question.
Mr. Jaitley, my third issue is on the issue of what's happening with the banks and Vijay Mallya. Coming to the economy, you had stated in August last year that the present level of NPAs are unacceptable, non-productive assets. Now, to what extent do you believe that this is a self-inflicted problem on the part of the banks? Would you agree that banks, you have the number of willful defaulters, I think, has gone up to some 8,000 odd now. Isn't this an indiscretion of the banks? Why don't you take on the banks?
I think let's not have a panic reaction. Let's keep one fact in mind. Banks in India have to and must continue to lend for growth.
Sure.
If credit completely dries out, then you probably won't have industrial activity left in this country. You won't have economic activity left in. And therefore, the response to the banking problem which has arisen is not a panic reaction. And I'm afraid some of us are treating it as in a manner of a knee-jerk panic reaction. I have said so earlier, so I don't mind repeating it. Suggestions in the media seem to suggest that one particular bad account is symbolic of what's happened to the entire banking system. In Parliament, I heard a suggestion coming from a very senior member that bank must stop giving loans. Now, if that were to happen, India would end up in a disastrous situation. People won't be able to build houses, industries won't be able to set up. Everybody needs banking finance to do that. The courts have also come in. I've seen a series of newspaper articles and responses where provisioning for NPAs is being treated at par with the writing of loans.
No, but there's a disproportionate amount of largest to Indian corporates which has happened over there.
Let's just deal with the problem as it exists. Unquestionably, there are a category of loans which should not have been given. I am at least convinced about it.
Sure.
And in some cases, the parties have taken the monies and fraudulently disappeared.
Yeah.
So the banks, this didn't happen when we were in government, but irrespective of that, that shouldn't have happened. A very large part of this NPA is relatable to business losses and losses caused because of business cycles. Now let's take the largest segment of the NPA, and I'll take that as an example. The steel industry. China has flooded the whole world with cheap steel. So the steel of our companies was not selling. In England, you've seen what's happened to the Chorus plant, which is the Tata plant. Sure. The United States of America, which is a very powerful economy, has had to impose almost 280% anti-dumping duty on Chinese steel. Now this situation had continued. The steel losses were predominantly relatable to the Chinese steel coming in, not relatable to loans improperly given. Now we've now put a minimum import price. Last 3 months the steel balance sheets are turning, and hopefully the sector will turn. And therefore in the management of the economy, one doesn't have to react in a manner that recall all loans, suspend all people. We'll end up creating a situation where the banking system itself will come under a harsh pressure. And therefore the government is, in consultation with the Reserve Bank, systematically dealing with this situation, and I hope we've seen the worst of it.
Now, Mike, okay, now you have said that banks, basically your argument is banks are doing what they can. Loans are not bad, I agree with you. Banks can't stop giving debt, I agree with you. And you are saying that banks are doing all that they can to retrieve every penny that they have given, including that to Mr. Mallya. Now, Mr. Jaitley, when there is a loan period which lasts from 2004 to 2012, the banks, in the case of Mallya, were late in declaring him a willful defaulter. So will you admit, or will you at least, when you analyze this, agree that there is, for some reason, what I don't understand is why is there a reluctance on the part of the banks to file an FIR? In the case of Vijay Mallya, the CBI has not filed a charge sheet. The Enforcement Directorate Chief flies down to Mumbai, sits with the general managers of banks, pleads with them virtually that please file a case, go file an FIR. The banks haven't even considered that.
You have to.
Is that not lethargic?
No, it's not lethargic. It's not lethargic. I'm seized of this case. I think a mistake in the Mallya case took place years ago when he was given a second round of restructuring. True. When airlines were bleeding, when he was not in a position to serve his interests, probably somebody at that stage thought, maybe we give him a new lease of life. They never knew of this intention that he would one day suddenly disappear. Now, before the CBI or any other agency registers an FIR, they must go through the entire transactions. They must go through possibility of any siphoning of money, create that evidence, and if they move a charge sheet or an FIR without that evidence, they'll eventually end up with egg on their face. Therefore, what the agencies are doing, that they are independently investigating the matter, going through the entire record. The ED is taking action. The ED has attached whatever assets in relation to some of the money laundering cases that he had in India. The banks themselves have been running from pillar to post. If you ask the chairperson of the State Bank of India, she would tell you the number of cases and the hundreds of crores that the State Bank of India has had to spend in just fighting cases. At that stage, even tribunals and courts were merely giving relief to him. It's only when the situation came to such a situation that he fled the country that everybody realized that India has been taken for a ride. And I think at the end of the day, the banking situation overall will retrieve. Mallya is a bad example. A bad example because I think he's done more injustice to India's private sector in making banks suspicious of borrowers. Banks should be enthusiastic in lending to borrowers because that's how economic activity will
on
go
a broader level, Mr. Jaitley, the big criticism of this government is that for all that you say about bringing people back to, to book, to face Indian law, Lalit Modi and Vijay Mallya, two of the shining examples of people who have taken the entire system for a ride, and I'm sure you've experienced and you're more than aware of the details in both cases, are relaxing, cooling their heels. They'll fight the case for 20 years. Is the Indian government being tough enough and bringing them back?
You are blaming the Indian government, but it's an imputation on the British government. Britain has one of the highest standards of civility in public life. And therefore, for Britain to become a haven for any absconder out of India is something which I can't fathom. The British government has taken a position that if you entered Britain with a valid passport, then we are not going to deport a person. You come in by way of extradition. And conventionally, they've been very slow and reluctant in extraditing people. And I think where you criticize the government of India, we can take all the steps. But ultimately, we can't physically lift an individual.
But you're disappointed with the response of the British government?
Well, I only hope that the British government had realized that absconders in one jurisdiction can't make a heaven in another jurisdiction. This is not civility. And this is certainly not British civility.
Why don't you push them a little bit more?
No, I think our agencies are in touch with them. Diplomatically, people have taken up this issue with them. And I hope at some stage we are able to convince them.
Mr. Jaitley, let's come back to politics. Now, on this one, you've been asked many times. I hope on this program, on this chat, since it's frankly speaking, you'll be frank about it. What's going on with Subramaniam Swami?
Well, why should I comment on this?
No, because this gentleman, the reason I'm picking this up is because it's coming to politics. The BJP appointed him as a Rajya Sabha member. He speaks in parallel to the position of your government on core and critical issues. We haven't seen a vehement rejection of his comments. Is it just civility from your side or others? He has been, for example, relentlessly angling for the removal of the RBI governor appointed by your government, criticizing policies. So it's not about an individual anymore. It's about whether within a ruling party and a government you can have parallel streams of thought.
Let me make it very clear that when this statement about the RBI governor was made, I had publicly disagreed with it.
Yes, you did.
Mr. Venkaiah Naidu made a statement publicly disagreeing with it. And then on behalf of the party, Mr. Amit Shah made a statement saying this is not the party position at all. Now, some people are outspoken and therefore they speak their mind out. The others remain more conventional about it. Therefore, as far as his position on the RBI governor is concerned, it's more than adequately clarified that this is not the party position at all.
It's not only about the RBI governor. In fact, the reason I'm pushing this question is because senior members of your party are saying that Uttar Pradesh elections will be fought on development. Subramaniam Swami is making claims and publicly speaking and campaigning for the building of a Ram temple, which is a polarizing issue by the end of the year. So my question to you, Mr. Jaitley, is even if you say that he's making these claims in his individual capacity or that he's individually outspoken, the impression that is being conveyed is that Subramaniam Swami is not bound by party discipline, or that there are two strains of thought in the party.
At the end of the day, whatever statements are made in public domain are made in public domain. But I can only tell you that ultimately it's the party president who determines the stand of the party. And therefore, as a part of the electoral strategy of Uttar Pradesh is concerned, yes, even in earlier elections, even though BJP stands committed to building the temple at Ayodhya, we've always said that we are not going to make it an election issue. For us, it's much more than an election issue. Even in the 2014 election, the Uttar Pradesh 2012 election, the party repeatedly said, it's a very important issue for us, but it is not an election issue for us.
But that's an on-record position.
Well, effectively, there's no difference between on
No,
record
because
and off record.
because the BJP has always claimed that development is its pole plank. But ahead of these elections, this, for example, the supposed migration of people, migration of people in Kerala has become a huge talking point. Now, notwithstanding the fact that migration is not due to persecution, your party members have made it out to be a communal issue, and some are saying that what has happened in Kerala is like the situation in Kashmir. Does this not compromise the development plan? Are you having a dual policy on UP?
We've just had a party meeting in Allahabad in the very heart of Uttar Pradesh. We had the Prime Minister's speech, we had the party president's speech, we had resolutions which are all in public domain. They clearly indicate what the party's roadmap is. Now, this issue of Kirana is a vexed issue. It's a debatable issue. There are people who believed that there is migration which is taking place. There is an official denial as far as the state police is concerned. Now, even today, for instance, as I speak to you, I saw a statement from the senior leader of the party saying that even though one of the MLAs held a protest march, he was told by the state party president to stop his march.
But that was Sangeet Som. He's still continuing to do it. He's not being stopped.
Right. You see, in a large party like us, people have their individual approaches also. He's a constituency MP. Therefore, he also gets impacted by constituency issues. But at the end of the day, the Uttar Pradesh party president asked him to accept what the police is suggesting and stop the march at a particular point.
No, I don't agree with you. The march did not stop because the central leadership intervened. The march stopped because the state government prevented him from doing so.
No, I just saw an interview on television by one of the senior leaders of the party in Uttar Pradesh, in fact, one of our senior most MPs in Uttar Pradesh, saying that the party president has requested him, he has spoken to him, that is the state party president, and requested him not to go in for any form of confrontation and stop his march at some stage.
Now, Mr. Jaitley, tell me, frankly speaking, is there a deliberate design ahead of the elections in Uttar Pradesh?
Certainly not. We don't
Are you polarizing?
We don't want in any way to communalize or polarize the election. But if there is even some evidence of migration taking place from Kirana, it's an important issue which the state government there must address.
No, Mr. Jaitley, you must address this issue in a little bit more detail because it's an issue which is a vexed issue. For a large part of the audience watching this interview today, they say the public criticism of the BJP is that they don't control these hotheads as strongly as they should.
Well, let me tell you.
Whether it's Arun Jaitley or Amit Shah or anyone else.
Well, let me tell you. When this government was formed in 2014, an immediate campaign started in the first 2-3 months that some 3 or 4 leaders have been making statements, MPs have been making statements. They were checked by the party president.
No, but you gave them tickets.
They were checked by the party president. They were restrained thereafter. They've been very restrained in their comments. If a local situation in a constituency develops, a local MLA is bound to react to that local issue. But the party as a whole takes a broad national view. It's certainly not our intention as a ruling party as a center.
Is love jihad a local issue, Mr. Jaitley? When Yogi Adityanath raises this issue, is love jihad a local issue? You know it's not. It's a polarizing Hindu-Muslim dividing issue.
You are taking up issues where individuals have made statements, the party has made its position clear, those individuals have been restrained, and I'm sure between 2014 and 2016, you've seen the change in the quality of their statements which are now.
But you are saying that you are saying on this interview that this will not be the nature of the campaign in the Uttar Pradesh.
Certainly not, because I think the most important issue in Uttar Pradesh at the moment is quality of governance and law and order.
Mr. Jaitley, why is Arvind Kejriwal versus Arun Jaitley becoming it's like a television serial with non-stop episodes where he keeps raising it? Is it because, as he says, this government is not letting his government function? Are you stopping his legislation's nature of working, and has this battle become personal?
First of all, I have nothing personal in it. I have never even commented on him. He made some charges against me. I took him to court. He's moving applications after applications to now delay the trial because he wants to run away from that trial. His applications haven't found favor with court. Except for the court doing and my lawyers addressing arguments in court, I don't make comments on him. Now, as far as the Delhi...
Why did you file him? Why did you respond by filing a defamation suit against him?
Well,
did you get provoked? When you look back in retrospect...
Certainly not. Certainly not.
Could you have held back?
No, I think I did the right thing. I did the right thing because if people make falsehood into a passion or a habit, then somebody has to take a precipitative action. Now, having said so, let us remember what is the problem in Delhi today? Delhi is a union territory. It is not a state. It is the seat of the central government. Delhi is a place where every embassy is located. The President of India, the Prime Minister, the Union Ministers, the Supreme Court, the Parliament, all national institutions are located in it. And therefore, consciously we decided that Delhi is a union territory. Tomorrow, if we decide to make it a state, it's a different matter. In a union territory, law and order powers are not with the union territory. They are powers of the central government which exercises them through the Lieutenant Governor. Now you want a law and order power. You want to control a local police station called the ACB. When the Constitution has prohibited it, you cannot do it. Then you have an administrator, which is the Lieutenant Governor, where functions are defined. Some of the actions have to be taken through the Lieutenant Governor. Can you have a state union territory government which says, we will bypass the Lieutenant Governor? Today you have an anarchic situation in Delhi where senior bureaucrats are not willing to serve in Delhi. You have a situation where I think the quality of public discourse in Delhi has suffered, because every morning when I wake up and I look at television, I see some shrill abuses.
What do you mean shrill abuses?
Well, there is a criticism from the Prime Minister's downward of almost everybody. Everybody in this city is a villain except for one particular political party. And the fact is that if people have voted them overwhelmingly in large numbers, it's a historic opportunity for them to really perform and govern. It's a historic opportunity.
You don't let them govern.
Well, where have we stopped them from govern? They have to govern in accordance with the Constitution. Under the Constitution, you don't have a law and order power. You don't have the ACB power. You have to do your functions through the Lieutenant Governor. You can't assume powers which don't belong to you.
No, but if you were to play devil's advocate and look at it from the other perspective, Mr. Jaitley, can it also be argued that what is happening in the case of Delhi is just a breakdown of communication, a complete mistrust between both sides, where there isn't a conversation happening? For example, we've broken a news story today on the channel which says that there was a cabinet note in which the government of Delhi was clearly told that these 21 MLAs you are appointing as parliamentary secretaries needs to necessarily go through the approval of the central government, and if you do it without the approval of the central government, you might get into a legal complicacy. Now, in a normal situation, the state government should have taken it through that due process. But if there is a breakdown of communication, then perhaps it is the mistrust which is the reason why this is happening.
I don't think there is a breakdown of communication. You have several other non-BJP, non-NDA governments in India. You have Congress governments. You have the Trinamool Congress government. You have the Samajwadi Party government. You have the Nitish Kumar government. Center and state is a constitutional relationship. We deal with them with the highest standards of federal politics which are required. In one state, you have a situation where, or in one union territory, where you have a situation where it conducts itself in a manner as though it's not a union territory, but it has an absolute power which is ordained to it by somebody. Now, let's take the example that you just now gave of these 21 secretaries. I think what has happened in Delhi is a constitutional monstrosity. Why did the Constitution and then the local law in Delhi say MPs and MLAs will not hold office of profit? Dr. Ambedkar was a wise man, Pandit Nehru was a wise man, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was a very sensible person. Why did they bring this provision? The reason was that the executive is accountable to the legislature, and therefore a member of the legislative body must not take benefits from the executive. So an MLA can't become the executive unless there is a constitutional compulsion. Those people could be exempted. So ministers were exempted, leaders of opposition were exempted, planning commission deputy chairperson or chairman was exempted. You suddenly have a situation where you say every MLA will now be a part of the executive. He will supervise hospitals, he will supervise schools, he will do all this because it's a good thing to do. At the end of the day, when you start accepting offices and vehicles and remunerations from the executive, the autonomy of a legislature is compromised. And then a year and a half later, you wake up and say, well, I will retrospectively amend the law. Well, I think the only disgraceful case of a retrospective amendment to convert an illegality into a legality was the election case of 1975, Mrs. Gandhi's case. She was unseated for allegations of electoral corruption. She retrospectively changed the law and said what was considered corruption is no longer corruption. This is exactly what the Delhi government is doing. What was an office of profit should no longer be considered an office of profit. Well, but it goes against the basic spirit of accountability of the executive to the legislature. I think that's the more important norm.
No, but Mr. Jaitley, is Najib Jung, the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, been given a charge almost to individually go after the Delhi government? Is there a fight by proxy between the centre and Arvind Kejriwal via the office of the Lieutenant Governor?
Well,
in terms of perception, that's what he's alleging.
Congress governments in Delhi, you've had a BJP governments in Delhi. All of them knew that if you are to govern the union territory, your legislations must go through the Lieutenant Governor. Services is a jurisdiction which belongs to the Lieutenant Governor. Law and order is a jurisdiction which belongs to the Lieutenant Governor. And if you say, well, I don't regard the constitutional limitations as any form of limitation, and then I won't recognize that office, then obviously you are not conducting yourself in accordance with law.
Well, I can only say, Mr. Jaitley, that this is an unexpected situation that has developed in Delhi. I mean, I don't think in the last 70 years there's been a situation of a breakdown of communication, nature of conflict between those running Delhi and
let me tell
outside.
you, Delhi is a great city to govern. Compared to other cities of India, it's got a much better infrastructure. It's a historical city. It's a city which has a very lively population. There's a lot of economic activity. There are educational institutions. There are all kinds of amenities which people have. Delhi is a revenue surplus region. And therefore, if a Delhi government decides to put its positive energy for the people of Delhi, sets up more educational institutions, world-class institutions, improves the infrastructure, goes to the slums of the city and gives them better amenities there, there's a huge scope for them to work in those areas. How do you countenance a situation? And let me tell you, I have said so repeatedly, though it's gone relatively unnoticed, and that's my regret. This is the first time that I am seeing that a government's power to issue advertisements is being used in order to win friends and silence critics in the media.
What proof do you have of that, sir?
Well, what better evidence do you want that any newspaper or channel which is critical of the Delhi government won't get ads? Please pick up and analyze the newspapers of Delhi. And all those who are always we've maintained an arm's length distance from the media, but who are always in the forefront of writing edit page articles saying, oh, the media is being threatened by the central government, are eloquently silent as far as the Delhi government is concerned.
Are you saying, Mr. Jaitley, that this is effectively, it's an important statement you make, effectively indirect blackmail of the media by the Arvind Kejriwal government?
I am not used to using such strong phrases, but I will advertise in your paper or your channel if you support my policies. If you are critical, I will not do it. The revenue of the state is being used. We just now have had a judgment coming from the Chennai High Court in the INB ministry, in which they've said that a committee appointed by the central government headed by Mr. B.B. Tandon, the former Chief Election Commissioner, must look into this question as to why the odd even scheme advertisements are appearing in Chennai newspapers in Hindi. So are you using the money of the state to merely expand your political footprints? What does the odd even scheme of Delhi have to do with Chennai? The Madras High Court has passed an order.
A significant comment you make there. I'm sure it won't go unrebutted on the other side, but it's your observation.
Well, I have said so publicly on more than one occasion.
force of the BJP. It was not evident in
each
Bengal.
one of our leaders, the Prime Minister, the party president, all cabinet ministers, I went and personally released the manifesto and addressed rallies in West Bengal. I don't think anybody wanted to go soft as far as Trinamool Congress is concerned.
You seem to have fixed your problem in the Rajya Sabha, am I correct?
Well, I don't think the problem
Because
is...
the GST bill has got a renewed thrust. We saw you with Amit Mitra the other day. You were there at the swearing-in ceremony of Mamata Banerjee. You have, the Prime Minister has met Jayalalitha recently. He has a long list of demands, etc. Two questions on it. First question, have you been therefore, through your political maneuvers, been able to successfully isolate the Congress and reduce their leverage in the Rajya Sabha that allowed them to obstruct the bill that you put your own political
my
credibility
intention
on?
is not to isolate the Congress. Let me be very honest. The GST is not a BJP bill. It was mooted by the Congress. GST will help the country. It will help in our GDP. It will help in better state revenues. The consuming states will earn a little more. We brought about a package of compensation for states which may lose in the initial years. And I think almost all states either entirely or significantly support the bill. Even the Congress chief ministers, to be fair enough, in the meeting have all supported it. As a parliamentary tactic, the Congress has raised certain issues. I will till the last day continue to persuade the Congress to see reason and not go back on the very bill that they themselves had introduced. But if they don't agree, then ultimately parliamentary decisions are to be taken by a vote. What other options do we have?
Was there a political trade-off? And that's, a question which has been on my mind. And since we are talking frankly today, Mr. Jaitley, in the middle of the Bengal election campaign, it was not unnoticed that central ministers, including you, were showering Mamata Banerjee with praise. The Sharada case, which is under CBI investigation, has not gone anywhere in about a year. Has the support for a GST come at a political price? Similarly, it can be said as far as, the AIDMK is concerned, will securing Jayalalitha's support to the GST rest more on the demand she presents to the Prime Minister rather than her actual concerns with the bill itself?
I think one needs to correctly understand the situation.
I'm just connecting the two.
The GST is not a partisan issue. In the GST, all consuming states are going to hugely benefit. So whether it is Kerala, the CPM government, or it's the Trinamool government in West Bengal, or it's the JDU government in Bihar, or the Biju Janata Dal government in Orissa, they are going to significantly benefit from the GST. And that's why whether it is Samajwadi Party or BSP, almost all regional parties support the GST. Because they are in regions which economically need development and they are supportive of it.
Was there a trade-off, political trade-off?
The producing states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, wanted to be compensated. We've given them a package. There is no political trade-off. The understanding is that if any state loses revenue for the first 5 years, the central will make up for it.
I said, did you go soft during the Bengal election?
Did we?
I thought, if you ask me, I think you went a little soft. There was Siddharth Singh fighting on the ground, but the full force of the BJP was not evident in
each
Bengal.
One of our leaders, the Prime Minister, the party president, all cabinet ministers, I went and personally released the manifesto and addressed rallies in West Bengal. I don't think anybody wanted to go soft as far as Trinamool Congress is concerned. We and Trinamool Congress are opponents of each other. But in GST, Mamata Banerjee's consistent stand has been that she supports GST because it's in the interest of West Bengal.
Now, as the Finance Minister, this interview will not be complete without my asking you on an issue of genuine public concern. You've seen the situation with the prices. And I just want to stay with the concerns of the common man, Mr. Jaitley. Consumer food price inflation is hitting a 21-month high at 7.55% year on year in May this year. What is more worrying is that this climb, if you look at it as a graph, has been fairly steep, 2.7 average during July to September, 5.2, then it rockets to 7.5. Now, focus areas, tomato prices, 100 rupees per kilo in some places, pulses somewhere at 200 rupees per kilo. There has been a meeting. You've done what you say you can do, but could this situation have been averted or checked before passing on the burden to the common man?
No. You see, you'll have to.
And for how long will this continue?
You will have to analyze the price situation. You lived in a UPA government where they left the government at an 11% inflation rate. We've consistently maintained it between 5.5%. So it's almost half of what it was in the UPA government. Prices of most commodities have been controlled. Now there are three areas which are areas of concern, which you rightly mentioned. There are seasonal fluctuations in the vegetable prices. So pre-monsoon, post-monsoon, for a brief period they rise. The demand-supply mismatch takes place. When the new supply comes in, then tomatoes and onions and potatoes all even out. At the moment, onions have reached a rock bottom.
But tomatoes
have gone up. So this is a supply-demand mismatch which the market will take care of when the additional produce comes in. That's a domestic factor. I think the serious challenge before India is pulses. India is the largest consumer and the largest importer of pulses in the world. We produce 17 million tons. We consume 22 million tons. 5 million tons is the shortfall. For 2 years, we have increased the procurement price so that more people grow pulses. It will take time. Last 2 years, there has been a global shortage. So Myanmar, Canada, Mozambique, Malawi, these are countries where it is available. Today, there is even a global shortage, and therefore we are trying to pick up as many pulses as available in the world and bring them immediately to India so that the demand itself can be...
Mr. Jaitley, all I want in this interview, and for people watching this interview everywhere, you are the Finance Minister of India. I know what you're talking about, hiking buffer stock, cracking down on hoardings. This has been what you've been saying for 2 years and you're doing your bit.
Importing more into India. From wherever it is available.
If an Aam Aadmi is watching this program today and saying, Mr. Jaitley, ये टमाटर के दाम 100 रुपए किलो हो चुके हैं, दाल के दाम कई जगह पे 200 रुपए हो चुके हैं. ये कब तक चलेगा? Can you give some sense to our audience today on when this will settle down by?
Individual commodities, I can name you 100 commodities where prices have gone down also. Now, if 3 have gone up, 2 because of seasonal variations in India, which I think as the new supply comes in over the next few weeks, the prices will get contained, which is tomatoes and potatoes. As far as dals are concerned, we are going to release some amount from the buffer stock into the market and import more into the country, both through private parties and through a government agency. So that more dal and pulses comes into the country. The moment the supply increases, the prices automatically fall. If you remember last year, when we took action against hoarding, we were able within a period of 2 weeks to bring the price down by 50 rupees.
Mr. Jaitley, when I interviewed you after you took over, I think I remember I asked you about how you're managing your different hats. I don't find your hats, actually your number of hats is only increasing. From your politics to your ministries, to your other roles, to your government roles, to your roles outside the country, managing political crises, wanted and unwanted, Rajya Sabha, government, political maneuvering, allies. How are you getting on? I think I asked you last time whether you sleep well.
I sleep
at the end of a day. But when I'm having this conversation, I have not done an interview with an individual who on 11 or 12 different subjects, which reflects in a way the number of things that you're juggling. Are you still sleeping well on all this stuff? And what keeps you up?
I sleep quite well. I think what only worries me is not the current politics. I think politics reaches its own level of maturity and these phases go out. I think India has a huge opportunity. When the world does well, everybody in the world does well. This is the first time in history that the world is doing badly and India is moving upwards. I don't think we must squander this opportunity by getting into extraneous issues. And when I say extraneous issues, we can't afford social tensions. They can act as a policy diversion. We can't afford not allowing, let us say, a bill like GST to pass through. We can't afford to just squander our energies in a union territory fighting the government of India instead of undertaking development activities. I think this is a time where India can seriously exploit this opportunity in the world.
Well, Mr. Urin, anything keeps you up at night?
Well, I think it's only this concern to better yourself and better India each day.
Mr. Jaitley, thank you. I think you've answered a range of subjects and really grateful for your time. Thank you, Mr. Jaitley. Thank you for coming on Frankly Speaking. Thank you.